I looked up at the mirror. I did like a double take, and I looked closer, and I could see like right in like this area, I could see through my scalp, whereas previously I couldn't. What's up guys, Derek, moreplates.com. Today we're going to be talking about the exact moment in time when I noticed I was losing my hair. So I've talked about in the past about the fact that you won't notice hair loss till you've lost over 50% of it. And a lot of people don't really like grasp what I mean by that. And they think, you know, oh, like old guys always lose their hair. Why is it that young guys that have way higher natural testosterone DHT levels still have their hair and older guys don't, even though their androgens are lower? Obviously, that goes against the whole androgen paradox and blah, blah, blah. And in reality, it really doesn't, because miniaturization is not an overnight thing. It's not like you suddenly hit 60 years old and 50% of the hair falls out of your head. Rather, it's a progressive thing that's built up and over the span of, you know, for some people, decades. And for some people, you know, a shorter period of time, depending on AR density, expression itself, endogenous androgen production, how much you actually produce, your, you know, what metabolism, sex hormones you have. Some people 5-alpha reduce more to DHT relative to aromatase into estrogen. Everyone has their own kind of like steroidogenesis pathways where their body like preferentially, you know, will move shit to that it feels physiologically beneficial for, you know, optimizing whatever processes are occurring in your body. And some people will have more 5-alpha reductase activity than the next guy, or some might have, you know, more aromatase expression or more aromatase enzymes to begin with because they're too fat, and then they get gyno. Like there's different, you know, there's individual genetic factors at play here, as well as lifestyle related, body composition related, diet related factors that all intertwine. But as far as the reason why, you know, you lose hair when you're older, it's not that you just started losing hair. You actually have lower DHT and lower test levels when you're older than when you were younger. Rather, it's that, first of all, you're just falling apart in general as you age, unfortunately. And hair follicles, hairs are organs still. So just like your other organs are slowly failing as you live your life, as depressing as that sounds, your hair is also going to eventually fail the same. This is why women, despite the fact that they have heads of hair in their old age, often, especially if they do, you know, perimenopause HRT and they don't just let their estrogen and progesterone get fucking tanked, they don't have as good hair as they had when they were younger, obviously. And this is just, you know, cellular degradation in general. But at the end of the day, the old women, a lot of them still have better hair than guys in their 20s, especially guys who are prone to hair loss. And most old women, especially the ones on menopause, the ones who get on HRT, perimenopause, have better hair than like the majority of guys in their 30s who were like peak, like top physical performance males. So at the end of the day, it comes down to essentially the androgen load in the body and the amount of androgenicity from those hormones in particular. So, you know, obviously if you have more DHT relative to, you know, a certain other, you know, pathway of steroidogenesis, then that's going to play a role on how much miniaturization you actually get. Something that has like a 5-fold higher affinity for AR is going to miniaturize way more than your testosterone. That's why, you know, finasteride is so effective, or dutasteride. So anyway, what I noticed in particular was I was about 19 or 20 years old at the time. And maybe I was like 20 and a half, 21. I don't know. Anyway, either way, I was too young to be noticing this shit, in my opinion. I was at a club and I was in the bathroom and I went up to wash my hands at the sink. I looked up at the mirror. I did like a double take and I looked closer and I could see like right in like this area, I could see through my scalp, whereas previously I couldn't. And I was like, what the fuck? So I was like, you know, positioning my hair differently and kind of like, I don't know, I just kind of like looked at it and I was like, that's weird. I've never had that before. And that was it. And that's kind of like the first thing a lot of guys do is they're kind of like, what the fuck? Like, that's weird. Yeah, they don't like, you can't logically conceive that maybe I'm losing hair right now. You just think that it must have always been like that. Or you just like are just noticing it and like, oh, that's like weird. But it accumulates and it gets worse. And then once you actually notice it, is getting worse, that's when you start to freak out. So this was not like my freak out moment. This was my like discovery moment. So I'm more perceptive of it at this point. Now I'm you know, here and there, I have pictures and whatnot of taken of me, and there's this one in particular in my car under heavy downlighting again. I noticed this is like, my hair was like done for the night. Everything was the same way I would do it normally, where I would never have this problem. And I look at this picture and I'm like, what the fuck? I can see my scalp again. And I was like, okay. I've had friends who were like, it's funny because of my friend group, I wasn't the first person to get into hair loss prevention, despite the fact that I'm the most hardcore into it at this point. But like back then, they were all like, dude, you gotta be proactive about this. It's gonna bite you in the ass. And I was like, no, it's not. I'm not prone to hair loss. Fucking delusional when you actually like look at all the males on, every side of my family have lost hair and are like bordering bald status, even some as young as in their 20s. And I, just thought, when you're a delusional young kid, you think a lot of things. And I thought it was fine. So I just left it. And then, things kind of got worse. And then I eventually realized, like, damn, dude, my hair looks like fucking shit. And it's getting a lot harder to manage styling wise. And it doesn't look like it used to. Like, I'm just noticing and like downlighting consistently. It's like I'm seeing way more scalp than I used to. It's way harder to cover up the spots. No matter what I'm doing, it's like, it's getting worse. And in addition to that, I still hadn't started any treatments. I was just kind of doing what most people do. They just like let it get worse instead of being proactive about it. At this point, I should have just started regimen. And obviously I was using hormones at the time too, which accelerated things significantly. So maybe I could have, naturally kept what would be perceived to be much better density for like another few years before I got to this point. Like the gear simply accelerates it and gets you to that point where you're noticing it quicker, but it's still just pushing you along your predetermined genetic path. So like, despite the fact that I might have noticed it at like 19, 20, I probably would have noticed it at like 23, 24 otherwise or something like that. Like either way, I was going in the same direction. This just got me there quicker. My dosages were never obscene. Like I always talk about how I've used dosages that I feel were excessive, but that's more so relative to like my body composition. Like I didn't need the dosages I did use for at times. Like it's not like I was always abusive. And my definition of abuse is like, if you're like a 200-pound lean guy, you don't need a ton of gear. Like, so my like perception of abuse for myself is what a lot of bodybuilders would consider a mild cycle. But for me, it was abusive because I just didn't need it. I was not that big, and I still don't need it. So, and that's partially why it wasn't that bad when I had to cut myself off really. So basically what I did was stop blasting was like one of the main things. In addition to that, starting hair loss prevention regimen. The first thing I ever used was RU58841, a topical anti-androgen, as well as Regenipure DR and Nizoral. That's the ketoconazole shampoos and whatnot. And this video is less about my protocol. I kind of wanted to use this video as a segue into my protocol because I want to do a series of videos. Like people are always asking me, what's your current protocol? Like, what do you give us an update? And like, I always answer the comments when I see them, by the way. Like I can only answer it so many times before it's too time consuming, but I'll always, put my regimen down there and then I'll put a disclaimer that, this protocol is probably going to change in the next month or two. Cause frankly, for the past like 4 years or something, I've been experimenting with like literally every single drug I could think of that would be useful in any capacity or has any therapeutic promise whatsoever. Even if it's in like the research chemical stage, I pretty much subjected myself to ridiculous amounts of risk to test drive pretty much every chemical under the sun because I want to have some sort of like comprehensive guide to put out at the end of this. And I also want to just figure out what works, to be honest, because I don't like the fact that we're limited by so few things that seem to be efficacious in this realm. Like it's very annoying to feel backed into a corner when it comes to what do you want to use? Finasteride, minoxidil, and then you're pretty much fucked and you have to apply it for life because that's what with minoxidil, as soon as you stop it, you get a shed again. Nizoral, those are like, the big three. It works very well for the majority of people. I'm not trying to like shit on it or something. And frankly, that's like one of the go-to recommendations for a lot of people. But I'm just saying like, there were so many things, so many theories going around about like what causes hair loss, what the true mechanism of action was. And it was like, so much of my bodybuilding knowledge that I had learned through, you know, like over the years doing consults for people. I guess that's kind of like coaching, except it was like, you know, short term. I only do Skype consults. I don't do like ongoing coaching. I've dug like so much into research of bodybuilding just out of sheer interest that it sort of had a lot of overlap with the hair loss thing. Like the way androgens interact with androgen receptors, satellite receptors around the body, the way they transcribe their effects in tissues. And then the overlap was like uncanny with the, you know, like the anti-androgens, the way they have like competitive inhibition of androgen receptors and, you know, selective activity at certain tissues and, you know, being an agonist at a certain tissue and an antagonist at another. There was like so much overlap between these two subjects that I was like, I just got enthralled in it, and my entire like channel essentially like didn't devolve into it. That's not a good term because it's like, I feel like a lot of the material is very, like a lot of people are subscribed for that content to begin with. So it didn't devolve. I don't even know why that term came to my head. It's more like, I don't know. It like deviated far more significantly in the direction of pharmacology than it did in the direction of like anything else I was interested in, whether it was like, you know, like cologne, like men's fashion, whatever it was that I had interest in. I just kind of like, for the past like 2 years in particular, I've been just like learning like a madman and just experimenting on myself, to be honest. Probably more than 2 years. Like it's been like in totality, it's been like 5-6 years, but just like since the conception of my actual channel, I've been like balls deep in this shit, like trying to figure out literally everything, like even stuff that is like preclinical, like I'm trying on myself, I'm injecting myself with random fucking chemicals, putting stuff on my head that we have no idea what's gonna do, and just documenting everything because I want to have some sort of, I just want to like put all the information out there and like figure out what works, to be honest. And because at the end of the day, creating a long-term regimen with like the least adverse effects or the least like the most, I don't know, like the least likelihood of ramifications, and even going beyond that, like it's not even just about figuring out the like stuff that works. Beyond that, it's figuring out their side effect profile and figuring out how to mitigate, you know, like downstream deleterious outcomes that could come from a result of, you know, like 5-alpha reductase inhibition with finasteride, neurosteroid deprivation, things I've been delving into in the past couple of years. The effects of androgen receptors, antagonizing them downstream. What's the effect going to be on, you know, multiple tissues that depend on androgen receptor activation? What else? I don't know, just like all the yeah, like anti-inflammatory cascades through like PGE2 and PGD2. Stuff like that is like, I've just kind of like soaking up information over the past couple of years. And, you know, it's getting a bit on a tangent, but I kind of just wanted to segue this video into what is going to be a few posts that I feel like are long overdue, where I'm going to explain, first of all, what I feel like I finally developed a blood test panel for finasteride users, where you can then, you know how I always talk about how, you know, you should get blood work before taking finasteride to kind of like assess your risk tolerance, I guess. Because it's like, if you, for example, if you had an individual with, you know, like borderline high SHBG, low free DHT and low T, or low free T, and a high E2 or something like that, you might be somebody who, once you further deplete your total DHT levels, put yourself in a position where if you don't have like a sufficient enough free T to support and kind of like pick up the slack for that lack of androgenic activity that you no longer have from the DHT, and compounding that, the fact that your SHBG is high and it was binding up the majority of your DHT anyways, like identifying who is an at-risk like candidate for finasteride and determining that and weeding them out beforehand, so you can actually figure out with like a reasonable level of accuracy, not just like, should I pop this finasteride because it's the hair loss like go-to drug to begin with, but actually like assessing with reasonable accuracy if you're one of the few individuals that's likely to encounter side effects when you take it. Because this is something no one ever talks about, is how to, you know, manage the side effect profile. It's always talked about, oh, like the chance of a side effect is like 1 in however, you know, much, but the side effect is still what steers a lot of people away from it. So I'm trying to like, this panel, I feel like will not only give individuals with post-finasteride syndrome some more insight into their current health status. In addition to that, you know, there's going to be more elaborate things they need to look into to kind of like address upstream steroidogenesis cascades. But for somebody who hasn't started finasteride, this is like the main thing this was developed for, is assessing your risk before you start it to begin with. So the first thing I always recommend is get baseline blood work before you use anything hormonal, whether it's, performance enhancing drugs, whether it's an anti-androgen, whether it is a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor, anything that's going to affect endogenous androgen cascades and physiologic processes that are supported by DHT, 5-alpha reductase activity. Like, there's so many functions downstream that are affected by these hormones that don't go accounted for, and having an elaborate baseline panel, you're not going to be able to go back and get that panel done once you've already got, post-finasteride syndrome or some sort of anti-androgen related side effect. You can't just go get blood work and then easily identify where the thing got thrown off, because you're just going to be looking at your current state and then trying to point out that's probably the reason, or this is probably the reason. And sometimes it's not as cut and dry as there's something that's lower, there's something that's high. Sometimes it's ratios of things. Sometimes it's you actually need the baseline panel to see, oh, I was, like that situation I outlined to begin with the, borderline low androgen, sort of estrogen dominant state that you were going into your finasteride use with. If you got gyno from finasteride and you saw that baseline panel, you probably wouldn't have even gone and used finasteride in the first place. Or you might have been more prudent about preparing for the likelihood that you may encounter gynecomastia or some sort of post-finasteride syndrome side effect, and had adjunct ancillaries on hand ready to deploy should you need to address a side effect that you are being prudent in predicting is likely to happen relative to your baseline hormone profile. You know what I mean? So hopefully I say you know what I mean, it's simple, but anyways, you want baseline blood work is what I'm trying to say. And a lot of the time, none of these labs have comprehensive panels that outline, that have high sensitivity testing with liquid chromatography, with tandem mass spectrometry, with equilibrium dialysis free testosterone, or even just a panel comprising of all the markers you'd want to see for gynecomastia, androgen deficiency, estrogen dominance, SHBG being elevated, IGF-1, prolactin, blah blah blah, pregnenolone, progesterone, all these things that could be thrown off potentially. None of these clinics have a turnkey panel for finasteride, and that's what I wanted to develop, and I finally got that done. So a lot of these videos are sort of backlogged because I wasn't prepared to I could put it out there here's what I would get on a blood test, but then you'd sort of be sent off by yourself to go pay $200 per single marker because there's no test that has every single thing lumped into one panel for a discounted rate. So I went and comprised every single high sensitivity test I would get, put it all into one comprehensive panel, and then I'm going to detail that in the video. I feel like this content I just said probably should have been saved for that video now that I'm thinking about it. But anyway, that's what's coming up. I'm going to do the finasteride kind of comprehensive overview of the panel itself. I'm also going to get into topical finasteride versus oral finasteride and my opinion on it. I've had experience with both now. I'm going to talk about minoxidil. If you're a minoxidil non-responder, what to do, the kind of things to maximize the efficacy of your growth agonist related products. I'm going to get into some other stuff that I feel is just stuff that's been on my to-do list. I have a lot of topics that aren't going to be in this string of things, but this is going to be some pressing topics that have been asked. And at the end of it all, obviously I'm going to do a video dedicated to my current protocol. And obviously disclaimer on that again, like I said, I'm still experimenting with things. So that protocol is likely to change, but for now, that's my protocol. And obviously, anyone who's interested in that, you can, take it with a grain of salt, but that's what I deem to be all the treatments worth evaluating at my current point of experimentation. And some of those will be dropped in and out, some of them won't be. And a lot of the time you have to understand too, when I drop something, it's not because I don't think it's effective. I will literally subject myself to hair loss to figure out if something is effective. When I ran the injectable SARMs experiment, I thought this could be a very, very viable thing for regrowing hair and potentially either sustaining muscle mass, even if you're an enhanced athlete, or building on your current physique while maintaining a lower androgen profile and regrowing hair while simultaneously getting jacked. I thought this was a potentially good strategy. And I think SARMs still have a place. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. But the injectable SARMs in particular, they're weird behavior once they're injected, and the lack of tissue selectivity potentially from the lack of first pass where, you know, whatever metabolites are created from that, just like mainlining it and injecting it into yourself, bypassing that whole system, you know, it vastly changed the tissue selectivity of the compound. And I actually lost a lot of ground from that experiment where I was doing the injectable LGD with oral estradiol. And like that was like, that's an example of something where like if I'm doing a treatment, it doesn't even mean I'm deeming it effective long term. It's like I'm just trying literally everything. And some of the experiments I end up worse off than before. Like I had to try and gain back ground after that because I kind of like fucked myself up on that cycle. So, or shouldn't say cycle, I should say short-term experiment, because none of it was even for muscle growth. I did it for like a couple of months, and it was basically to assess my hair, and as well as just like general like feeling like well-being. Is it tolerable from like a HRT context, or like a blast phase from like, you know, mental health standpoint, all that kind of stuff. So if you haven't checked that out, you can check out that video, obviously, as well as anything else I've done. And yeah, more hair loss prevention videos to come. And hopefully some of the stuff that I talk about, I can actually like link to. Like part of me working with my HRT clinic too puts me in a good position where I can actually link out to some of the stuff I use myself. Whereas prior it was kind of like, okay, well, this thing is good, so go find it. And that's, you know, it's like, where do you get it? Like, I can't like fucking link it because it's not, you know, like some of the stuff is medically prescribed. Like even if I say like finasteride tablets, some people would rather get it through telemedicine than through a local doctor. With that being said, way cheaper through a local doctor. So by all means, just do that. But if you're going to do that, but I'm just saying certain combinations of things that have proved to be efficacious, like for example, things that are compounded with minoxidil to enhance certain enzymatic activity. There's stuff that's like you're not going to get from your standard doctor or your standard like over-the-counter like product from, you know, Costco or something. So like there's certain things that I'm going to elaborate on that like hopefully I'll be able to actually like direct you where to go now, but we'll see how that goes. Either way, I want to get out the information. Some of this stuff's been backlogged, and I've compiled a lot of good stuff that I'm really looking forward to putting out there, because I've done a lot of experiments, a lot of stuff that I haven't even posted that I'm like really, you know, excited to put out, to be honest. And okay guys, so this is the hair loss subsection of my HRT clinic. This is something I've been trying to get set up for a while now, and it's finally ready. It's a bit bare bones. It's a bit rough right now. Some of the stuff is a bit slow, and we're working on optimizing it, but I know there's gonna be a lot of people asking where to get all the stuff I'm referring to in this video, where I say, oh, you know, we're coming out with our own, I'm gonna try and get access to the hair loss meds. Like I was initially just gonna wait until my last video on my protocol to just kind of show which products I use, but I can already anticipate that doing, you know, 4 or 5 videos about hair loss prevention before I get to the protocol video, people are obviously gonna get super impatient and want to know. Well, like justifiably, like it'd be annoying to have somebody talk about all this stuff for a week straight and then not link to it until the very end of the week. So I'm just gonna do like a quick explanation probably in each video just to explain it in case you only see one of the videos or whatever. I'm just gonna do a quick overview here. A more elaborate overview will be done during the actual protocol video that I do at the end of the week, but this is just an intro to the subsection itself. So if you click on the link in the video description, and it's probably going to be included in most of the video descriptions moving forward, or at least the hair loss related content, it'll be in the video description. Basically, you see here, hair loss, hair care. So this is the subsection of the HRT clinic for available medications. You can't add any of this stuff to your cart and just buy it because it's prescription medications only. What you can do, however, is add them to a wish list and make an account, which then allows you to then connect with our doctors via telemedicine, Skype, FaceTime, Zoom, whatever's convenient for you, and then see if you qualify for prescriptions for these medications. So this is becoming a more, you know, mainstream approach to prescriptions nowadays, especially with all the stuff going on in the world. So it's very convenient to have stuff like this, and obviously having me sourcing specific stuff that I know people would want, as opposed to random companies who don't know what customers are looking for. I'm doing my best to kind of get all the things that I use personally or deem worth looking at and exploring added. So trying to make this as turnkey as possible for as many people as possible, including myself, because obviously being able to have access to pharmacy grade medication is something that I prioritize much over research chemicals and whatnot. So at the end of the day, if you can get the same thing pharma grade versus research, then the pharma is always ideal, as well as being able to travel with it and all the good stuff that comes with prescription. So anyways, here we have, traditional finasteride, 1 milligram. We have a bunch of random stuff. And honestly, this will become more organized in the future. But some of the main things to look at are the finasteride. Obviously, if you are, that's one of like the introductory medications to kind of take seriously as far as something that really, bang for your buck is going to produce substantial results. However, it's not risk-free. So go watch my video on pre-finasteride blood work, which is probably going to come out tomorrow. So hold off. Like realistically, even if you're interested, you can add it to your wish list and just wait until the content comes out and then decide afterwards. But anyway, just be aware of that. Some of the other stuff in here, we have latanoprost compounded with topical finasteride. We have a stronger topical latanoprost, which is an alternative to minoxidil that I'm exploring currently, and I feel has a lot of therapeutic promise in this application. We have traditional minoxidil and finasteride topicals. We have tretinoin compounded into minoxidil. We also have a bunch of different things, just topical finasteride on its own. We have different concentrations of different things, different concentrations of topical finasteride in different types of applications, like a foam versus a liquid. There are a lot of options here, so you can just check it out for yourself, but that's kind of just the introductory to where you can go to check out this stuff. And this wish list button kind of lags and when it loads. So when you first go to the page, it might take 10 to 15 seconds for these buttons to pop up. But once they do, you can click add to wish list, and then it will, if you have to make an account first before you can actually add to your wish list. But once you've registered and made an account, you can add to your wish list. And then from there, you'll have to speak with our doctors and kind of go from there in terms of actually getting your prescriptions filled. But it's honestly going to be a lot easier and more convenient than going to a traditional doctor in person. And above and beyond that, no traditional doctor really knows about any of this stuff at the end of the day, nor are they going to give you access to proper lab panels to assess your risk tolerance before any of this stuff. So there's a lab section as well that I recommend everyone use and leverage before using anything that manipulates their hormone profile, whether it's HRT, whether it is 5-alpha reductase inhibition, whether it is anti-androgen usage, any of that stuff. Get your labs done first, and I'll go into the lab panels either tomorrow or the day after, depending on the schedule, but that is on the to-do list. Yeah, so today, introduction into the moment I lost my hair, my kind of like approach to how I got into hair loss prevention, and the, delving into this stuff, the overlap with bodybuilding pharmacology and hair loss prevention, kind of like what led me to where I am now, and delving down the rabbit hole of stuff that interests me, basically. And, tomorrow, and for the next few days, I'll be putting up a couple videos about some hair loss topics that I feel are, long overdue. And then the last one will be like my protocol, essentially. And then from there, I'll probably here and there still post hair loss content like I always do, but it'll be like sort of back to the regular scheduled programming of, here and there bodybuilding stuff, here and there hair loss stuff, here and there lifestyle stuff, that kind of thing. So anyways, take from that what you will. Hope you guys, if you're looking forward to seeing that stuff, please like and subscribe, because you're not going to get notified if you don't subscribe. Notification bell, I guess, too, because you won't get notified on your notifications if you're not hitting the bell. I don't know why it would, if you're subscribed, you'd think it would automatically notify you, but apparently you have to hit a bell too. Helps the algorithm when you comment, so those are much appreciated. If you can comment, that helps. Follow me on Instagram at @moreplates_more_dates. Facebook, Snapchat, BitChute, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, wherever I am. If you want to listen instead of watch, it helps, not destroy your data as well as your battery. If you subscribe to the podcast, like I said, with the iTunes, Spotify, whatever other platforms I'm on, those are in the description below too. If you want to listen to audio only in the car, at the gym, audio only is what I do to get through podcasts and saves me a lot of data and battery life. So I definitely recommend that. And if you're listening there, if you can drop a 5-star rating, that helps the algorithm there. So that's much appreciated. If you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with below. My HRT Clinic. It's all telemedicine, Skype, FaceTime, Zoom, anything that may be medically warranted to optimize your current health. Hormonal intervention wise, I would recommend reaching out to them. The nootropic and pre-workout formulas I developed, New Gorilla Mind, great for productivity, creativity, mental clarity, focus, sharpness, just being on the ball essentially for more hours during the day. Great for cramming for exams, great for business presentations, but great for pretty much, you know, like editing, whatever it is that if you have like an intensive work day, I feel like it helps milk more hours of productive work out of the day than would otherwise be possible. And it's what I use myself to stay locked in. It's what I used to when I was in university and just cranking out ridiculous cram sessions that I don't necessarily recommend. But and then the pre-workout formula, self-explanatory. Those I developed myself as well. And just compare the label of your pre to mine. And I encourage you to give it a shot. Like the labels are pretty obvious as to how stacked they are in comparison to 99% of other products on the market. And if you are somebody who enjoys pre-workout and you are somebody who needs that either get up and go to get to the gym, or you just, you know, the mind muscle connection is mainly what I use them for. Really helps me connect with, you know, certain body parts that I would otherwise not feel, get a better pump, get a better squeeze, drive more nutrients potentially. I'm not saying they build more muscle, but it's like, for me, that's not what I use them for. I use them for performance and just making sure I get a high quality workout in every day, especially when I'm running low on energy. The pre-workouts help. And you know, there's a stim based one as well as a stim free one. Gorilla Mode is the stimulant based one, and the stimulant free formula, Gorilla Mode Nitric, both are exceptional in my opinion and very, very stacked. And somehow it still tastes good. I don't know how we managed to come up with a good flavor system for them, but we did. And it doesn't taste like ass despite the fact that they're like 30 to 40 grams of active powder in the fucking serving. So if you want to support the channel, you can check those out. Anything else I'm associated with, video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.